Let's get the elephant out of the room. The Ford Mustang was originally a failure. Well, the concept was. The first Mustang wasn't a muscle car. It was a tiny, two-seat, mid-engine roadster that looked like a spaceship and had a V4 engine. Ford built it to compete with the MG, realized it was too expensive to build, and scrapped the whole thing to build a family car instead. Thank God. The Mustang almost wasn't called the Mustang. Ford's marketing team considered names like the Cougar, the Torino, the Panther, and, I'm not kidding, the T-Bird too. They eventually settled on Mustang, but not because of the horse. It was actually named after the P-51 Mustang fighter plane from World War II. The horse logo came later because the designers thought the plane logo looked too much like an appliance brand. Speaking of that horse logo, take a close look. It's running to the left. Why? Because racehorses run around the track counterclockwise. It was a subtle way for the designers to tell you. This car is built for speed, not for groceries. The Mustang is the only car in history to accidentally sell 22,000 units on its first day. Ford projected they would sell 100,000 cars in the first year. They hit that number in 3 months. Dealers were literally locking the doors because people were sleeping in the cars to claim them so nobody else could buy them. In 1965, Ford realized they had a problem. The Mustang looked fast, but it wasn't actually fast. It was basically a Ford Falcon wearing a tuxedo. So Lee Iacocca called Carroll Shelby and asked him to turn his secretary's car into a race car. Shelby reportedly laughed in his face and said, "Lee, you can't make a racehorse out of a mule." But Iacocca had an open checkbook, so Shelby took the job. The result was the GT350, and it was a nightmare to drive. Seriously, the brakes were loud, the exhaust made your ears bleed, and the cabin smelled like raw gas. Shelby didn't care about comfort, he cared about winning. And it worked. The GT350 destroyed the Corvette on the track, cementing the Mustang as a real performance car. There is no such thing as a 1964 Mustang. I know your uncle swears he has a 64, but he's lying. Ford started production in March 1964, but every single VIN number from that year is registered as a 1965 model. Enthusiasts call them 1964 and a half models just to feel special, but legally, they don't exist. The Mustang II is the most hated car in existence, and that is unfair. Listen, I get it. It was ugly, slow, and based on the Pinto. But here is the hard truth. The Mustang II saved the brand. It launched right before the 1973 oil crisis. If Ford had kept building massive V8 muscle cars when gas prices quadrupled, the Mustang would have died just like the Plymouth Barracuda. The Mustang II sold over 1 million units. It was a terrible car, but a brilliant product. Ford once tried to kill the Mustang and replace it with the Ford Probe. In the late 80s, gas prices were up again. Ford wanted to replace the rear-wheel drive V8 Mustang with a front-wheel drive Japanese car made by Mazda. When the news leaked, thousands of angry Americans sent letters to Ford's headquarters. It was the biggest fan revolt in automotive history. Ford panicked, renamed the new car the Probe, and kept the Mustang alive. The Fox body Mustang was used by the U.S. Air Force. Not for flying, obviously. The U-2 spy plane is notoriously difficult to land because the pilot can't see the ground. So, the Air Force bought 5.0-liter Mustangs to chase the planes down the runway at 140 miles per hour, radioing instructions to the pilot. They chose the Mustang because it was the only American car cheap enough and fast enough to catch a spy plane. John Wick almost drove a different car. In the original script for the movie, Keanu Reeves was supposed to drive a 1970s Dodge Charger. But the stunt coordinators realized the Mustang was better for the specific drifting stunts they needed to do. That decision single-handedly spiked the value of 1969 Mach 1s by about 30% overnight. The turn signals on the 2010 to 2014 Mustangs. You know the sequential ones that flash 1, 2, 3? Those aren't legal. Well, they weren't. Department of Transportation regulations stated that a turn signal must light up all at once. Ford found a loophole. The first light turns on, then the second, then the third. Technically, they are 3 separate brake lights turning on in sequence, not one turn signal. Ford lawyers are the real MVPs. The new Mustang Dark Horse has a hidden Easter egg. If you look closely at the headlights, there are tiny horses embossed into the plastic. But if you look at the rear glass, there are 7 distinct dots at the top. This is Morse code for SPD. It's cheesy, but I love it. The 2000 Cobra R was so stripped down it didn't even come with a radio or air conditioning. Ford said, "If you want to listen to music, listen to the exhaust." It was the only time a major manufacturer charged more money for a car with less equipment, and people happily paid it. The Mustang was the first car to ever offer a burned-out mode from the factory. It's called line lock. It locks the front brakes while letting the rear wheels spin freely, allowing you to do a perfect burnout without ruining your brake pads. Ford puts a warning in the manual saying, "For track use only," but we all know exactly what you're doing in the Walmart parking lot. Steve McQueen did his own driving in Bullitt. Well, mostly. During the famous chase scene, McQueen drove for the close-ups, but the dangerous jumps were done by stuntman Bud Ekins. Ekins actually destroyed the suspension on the Charger during filming, but the Mustang survived almost every jump. It proves that solid rear axles might ride like a wagon, but they are tough as nails. There is a Mustang that isn't a Ford. It's called the Shelby GT 500 KR. The KR stands for King of the Road. In 1968, Chevrolet was planning to use that name for a new Corvette. Carroll Shelby found out, called his lawyers, and copyrighted the name King of the Road 3 days before Chevy could file the paperwork. He didn't even have a car for it yet. He just did it to spite Chevy. The exhaust note of the 2019 Bullitt Mustang was tuned to match the original movie car. Ford engineers digitally analyzed the audio from the 1968 film and tweaked the active exhaust valves to replicate that specific burble. That is an insane level of dedication to nostalgia. You can blame the Mustang for speed limits. Okay, not really, but kind of. In 1993, Ford released the Cobra. It was fast. Too fast. It was faster than the Camaro and the Firebird, but it was also slower than advertised. Owners dyno tested the cars and found out they were missing about 30 horsepower. Ford had to do a massive recall to replace the intake manifolds and exhaust systems. It was a PR disaster, but it proved that Mustang owners actually drive their cars hard enough to notice. The Mach-E is not a Mustang. I don't care what the badge says. It's a quiet, electric crossover. Putting a pony on a frantic SUV is like putting a Nike logo on a recliner. It might be comfortable, it might be well made, but it's not an athlete. You can fight me in the comments on this one. The gas tank on the classic Mustangs is basically a bomb. In the 1965 to 1970 models, the top of the gas tank is actually the floor of the trunk. If you get rear-ended hard enough, the trunk collapses, the tank ruptures, and fuel sprays into the cabin. Ford fixed this in 1971, but for 6 years, driving a Mustang was technically an extreme sport. Let's talk about the crowd killer reputation. Why do Mustangs always crash at Cars and Coffee? It's not just bad drivers. It's the suspension geometry. The solid rear axle on the older S197 Mustangs behaves weirdly when you lose traction. If you lift off the gas mid-slide, the car snaps back the other way violently. Combine that with cheap tires and a teenage driver, and you have a recipe for a viral video. The 2024 Mustang has a feature called Remote Rev. You can stand outside your car, press a button on your key fob, and the car will rev the engine for you. It serves absolutely no functional purpose. It is purely designed to annoy your neighbors. And for that, Ford, we thank you. During the development of the S550, the design team had a picture of a Porsche 911 taped to the wall. The goal wasn't to beat the Camaro anymore. The goal was to beat the Europeans. That's why they finally ditched the solid rear axle for independent rear suspension. The traditionalists cried about it, but the lap times dropped by seconds. The 1979 Fox body remained on the same chassis for 14 years. Think about that. The same chassis that underpinned a 1979 Econobox was still being sold in 1993 as a performance car. It's like using the same iPhone for a decade. But because they made so many of them, parts are dirt cheap, making it the cheapest way to go fast in America. In 1966, Ford put a Mustang on the observation deck of the Empire State Building, but the elevators were too small. So, engineers sliced the car into 4 main pieces, took them up in the passenger elevator, and reassembled the car on the roof 86 floors up. They did it again in 2014 for the 50th anniversary. The rarest Mustang ever is the 1967 Shelby GT 500 Super Snake. They only made one. It had a GT40 race engine in it. Goodyear used it to test their Thunderbolt tires. They drove it at 142 miles per hour for 500 miles straight. It sold recently for $2.2 million. If you buy a manual Mustang today, you are part of an elite club. The take rate for manual transmissions on the Mustang GT is nearly 40%. That is drastically higher than the industry average. While Ferrari and Lamborghini have killed the stick shift, Ford keeps it alive because they know their customers would riot without it. The dashboard of the original Mustang is symmetrical. It's called a dual cowl design. The passenger side looks almost exactly like the driver's side. Why? Because Ford wanted to sell the car in Europe and Australia, and a symmetrical dash made it cheaper to convert the car to right-hand drive. Finally, the Mustang is the most liked vehicle on Facebook. It has more followers than any other car model. It has survived gas crises, recessions, terrible management, and questionable styling choices. It is the only pony car that has been in continuous production for over 60 years without taking a break. Chevy killed the Camaro twice. Dodge killed the Challenger. But the Mustang just keeps running. Thanks for watching. If you think the Mach-E is a real Mustang, hit the dislike button. If you have a brain, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.